So we had to grow, we had to mature. You know, every wine started off as a grape, but that grape had to be smashed. It had to be juiced. It had to be fermented. It had to go through a whole thing to become the wine that it is.
What's up, peoples? It's your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And your boy Omega.
We're serving up some tea on everybody's favorite auntie, Fresh Prince's very own Janet Hubert, also known as the OG Aunt Viv. We unpack the recent Fresh Prince reunion and reconciliation of Will Smith and Janet. We also discover some internal triggers that arose. As every episode, we want to thank all of you for listening. We truly appreciate you listening to our hearts and minds on varied and difficult topics.
Special thank you goes out to our Patreon subscribers for their support of the show. Every little bit helps us reach our goals to invite more high-profile guests and create bonus content.
And if you want to join in our conversation outside of this cast, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at HaveADrinkCast, and make sure to use that hashtag HADcast.
Remember, this is always a conversation. If you don't agree, you want to voice your opinions, or even suggest a topic for an episode, feel free to join our Discord as well. The link will be in the description.
And please, if you like what we're doing here, share us with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Hey, start a fan page and post all your favorite Hadcast moments and quotes. Your referrals mean a lot to us, as that's how we gain more listeners. So,
Thank you again.
and get prepared to sit
Think.
and have a drink.
Welcome to Have a Drink Podcast. Enjoy the episode.
We said peace. What's up, peoples, and welcome back to another episode of the Have a Drink Podcast, where we invite you to sit, think, and have a drink. We're your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And your boy Omega.
Hey, thank you, and thank you all for joining us at the bar tonight. This evening, we're actually going to talk about something that's been released within the past week. The Will Smith interview with Janet Hubert, the original Aunt Viv.
Yes. This past weekend, or this past week, I should say, last week, it was the 30th reunion of the Fresh Prince of BelAir television show. And they actually had all the old cast members, main characters, come back, and including Janet Hubert, who was the original Aunt Viv. She was only a part of the show for the first 3 seasons, and then she disappeared one day. That was what the unpacking was for, because finally Will Smith and Janet Hubert finally got to talk
On that reunion episode.
on the reunion episode. Yes, and that was it was a bittersweet moment. It had to get real bitter before it could get sweet, because there was a 30 years worth of processing and feelings and information that had to be shared for there to be some real healing. And now on top of that, we also had Will Smith, who actually ended up doing a Red Table Talk takeover. Red Table Talk, if you guys are unfamiliar, is a Facebook show that is ran fully by his family, his wife, and she does that. So Jada Pinkett Smith, she runs a Red Table Talk. So he did a takeover where he brought his problem to the table and he processed it with a counselor.
That was actually on site for the Janet Will Smith interaction on the reunion episode.
I ran past this video today on my drive after work, and I was like, yo, this was so deep, because I've seen the videos that she posted years prior addressing the situation. And I remember being personally affected by this. And I say personally affected because I grew up with the show. I grew up watching the show. So it was kind of a trip to see what was really going on from her point of view, and to see that he finally is going to talk about it and have to confront her. And I say confront her because it's like, it's not so much about like, it wasn't a negative confrontation. It was more of a, we need to talk and we're going to do this right here, right now.
We need to clear the air and it was really interesting to watch the unpacking happen between the two because we got a chance to see someone who was so hurt, so affected, so destroyed on many levels, from career to reputation
To home life.
to home life. Yeah, it to see that unraveling for a lot of people because like you said, you grew up watching the show. I did too. I mentioned quite a few episodes ago, the sudden shift of Aunt Viv actually affected me and my perception. It was that week that we before we did the episode when I was talking to you about it.
Hmm.
Of like, I was like, it's just until today that I realized that I had this perception for darker skinned black women that, at some point as they get older, that they become light skinned, all because the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and the sudden shift of Aunt Viv from Janet Hubert to Daphne Reed. It gave me that perception and it didn't like even phase me as a thought just because they didn't necessarily address it in the manner that you feel like would garner attention. I also wasn't alive during that actual shift of Aunt Viv power, so to speak. But so I don't know, there might have been more press about it, but like still the acknowledgement within the show was very
There was no acknowledgement.
I, that
I
well,
mean,
I
there was
mean,
a scene of a look, maybe.
everybody was giving, yeah, like there was a bunch of like I think the kids were all giving Aunt Viv weird looks because they were like even Will goes, who this? Like, right? And then they all just kind of go with it. It's like, Aunt Viv. Oh, did she? I don't know. So we just got back from the beach, so you know how everybody looks different after that. I don't know.
It's crazy. I mean, to think about that, like what that does to people's psyche
Right.
as an audience to see that sudden change. As I mentioned earlier, it's weird that when people when they rotate characters or change up a character, if they have to replace a character, usually they do it in a gradual way, where there's going to be they're going to find somebody the same complexion, or the same height, or the same physical build, or the same attitude, or something like that. Whereas, and again, like I said earlier, for lack of a better term, it was literally night and day. It went from this tall, slender, chocolate, strong, opinionated, multi-talented actress, woman, figure. I mean, she held her own as Aunt Viv, hard, to the polar opposite, a shorter, fairer skinned. Uh, I don't know what her talent level was because she never sang nor danced in the show.
They gave that character, not necessarily they downgraded with actors. I feel like it was more so they downgraded the character's
Uh,
presence in the show and her and their arc, so to speak.
Greatly, greatly. I mean, it was just a few days ago. I just watched a video of a little girl. Like when I say little, she's like maybe 5, 6, maybe. She did the dance routine that Aunt Viv did in that dance class.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So dope. And I was like, yo, like she was tight. Like I was thinking about that and I was like, yo, like
That's inspirational.
that was big. Like we don't see black mothers dancing like that. Being comfortable in a leotard in a class full of young girls, young
Right.
women, showing her strength, showing her power, showing her confidence. Did you see how her hair was even braided into like what would have been a crown?
Yes.
Like we don't see that. Or how she sang Follow the Drinking Gorge. And I think the first or second season when she sang about Black history and she sang that song
Yes.
and she didn't just hum it. She didn't
No, she
just,
sang it.
she sang it. And I can hear it in my head right now. And I'm like, that was such a powerful moment, like to see this. And to then go to a woman who was almost nougat. I wouldn't even say sidekick. I would almost say nougat. And I say that Okay, so when you have a candy bar like a Snickers, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so what's in a Snickers?
the
Chocolate,
chocolate,
peanut
peanut
butter,
butter,
peanuts.
nougaty center.
nu-
Yeah.
So what's nougat?
Oh, isn't that the fluff in between?
Exactly. She was the nougat on the show. Cause tell me, how was her character? Tell me something standoutish that she did that really stuck out.
I mean, I didn't feel. Yeah, I feel like the Aunt Viv, emotional lessons, they stopped. They stopped with the depth of that. It then rested back on the shoulders of Uncle
Uncle
Phil.
Phil.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And I just feel like, and I hate to call her nougat, but that's really what she was because she did not stand out. Like, whenever I hear Aunt Viv, I automatically go to Janet Hubert.
Right.
I automatically go to that person because her character was so captivating. Every
Absolutely.
character, every person in that cast stood out except the new Aunt Viv to me. And I know that may sound unfair, but it's just the truth.
No, it makes sense. I mean, and like I said, like I feel like it wasn't a downgrade. Like I'm just trying to reiterate, like I don't feel like it was a downgrade of an actor, because I don't know, Daphne's accomplishments, but I don't feel like it was a downgrade of an actor. I feel like it was just, not only did they lose a very talented actor, and ruin her life in the process, but they also downgraded the character herself, like that's really important to reemphasize. I feel, because it's after our unconscious bias episode, I've been doing a lot of, trying to be aware, and conscious of those biases that I might have had, or things that, like, when I'm talking with people about stuff, I'm combine that with our colorism episode. I'm trying not to light skin versus dark skin, like, oh, they had this woman who was everything, and then they replaced her with a no, like, nobody, or somebody, like, even though her character, after the actor changed, might not have stood out to you anymore. um it might have just been what she had to come in and play, because
Yeah,
that's the way Hollywood, uh that's where they put her, because of
yeah, yeah,
her lighter skin, you know
yeah.
um
But but then also think about and I'm glad you brought up the unconscious bias part of it, right? Because nobody wants to be offensive or to play the light versus dark. But if you really look at it, that's what was being done already. Because when you think of a dark skinned black woman, she's seen as what? Strong,
Strong. Well,
fierce. I mean, the reason why I'm saying that is because I said all that to say this. They called her difficult to work with, which was suicide for her career.
career.
Now, mind you, we just talked about her being a dark skinned black woman. And her words was that was career suicide for me. That killed my career. If you call me difficult to work with, nobody will ever work with me. And I'm already dark skinned. I'm already a dark skinned black woman. And they already have their preconceived notions of how I'm going to be.
I just wanted to state something that I was noticing too, is because, like, she was listing off all the things that, like, or either her or Will Smith, they were listing off the accomplishments of Janet, of the Juilliard training, all these different levels of the feats of accomplishments, where she became phenomenal. She had to be extra phenomenal, and it's all too common that, if we're looking at the marginalized groups of people, we're talking females, they have to work harder and do great just for little smaller pay, and then, being a black person on top of that, it's like you have to be you have to be phenomenal, like we say, like being a black person, you have to be phenomenal at what they're good at. But then being a darker skinned black person on top of that, you have to shit gold right in front of them in order for them to be like,
Eat
wow.
silver, shit gold.
Yep, eat silver, shit gold. And then combining all of that, together, being a woman, being a black woman, being a darker skinned black woman, having all of that under her belt, and just like having all, like, think about that for just a moment. You said that, like she was saying, that was career suicide for her. Bro, do you see how many things, like how many accomplishments she had just to have one little comment about being difficult to work with that killed
That's all
her
it took.
entire career?
And
Like
that's all it
where
took.
where people, all they, like, sometimes you may experience, we go into an interview and they look at your resume as an entertainer and they're like, we like, or an audition or whatever, you like, your resume speaks for itself. You have the qualifications to do this. You have that. Like, there's no doubt about it. We just want to see how you are in person. But to like have that just be hanging over all of those things that like she's overly qualified for, and that completely like cuts her out of the running and like tarnishes the name,
But it's
kills
also
career.
and it's also not just what was said, but who said it.
Who's ooh
But
yes,
who said it? It was by who? Who said it? Who was hot?
Will Smith.
I would say he probably did say it, but didn't mean to say it to whoever or he meant to say it to who he was saying it to, but he didn't realize that they would take his words and run with that. Because at that time, I'm almost 100% positive he had no idea that that little phrase would be career ending for somebody else. Because outside of that industry, that phrase could have been just, oh man, well, whatever. Some people are difficult to work with. But no, that woman right there is difficult to work with. Oh, then we'll never work with her again. And it came from you, the rising star, the king of everything. Oh man, she's done. Because then you got people sitting there looking at it like, well, how come black men don't protect black women? It's like, well, is it so much that he's not protecting, or is it the fact that he doesn't know the weight of his words? Because after a while, you got to start to understand. Some people don't get it. They don't know.
Right. And the the subconscious, unconscious, I guess, programming, societal programming, the systemic, the systemic racism that kind of regurgitates that and drives those things home within each other. So how we react to each other,
Mm-hmm.
how we have, I mean, he even mentioned it, as they started to unpack it, that it was, he had he Aunt Viv, Janet Hubert playing Aunt Viv, took a parental role for him. And so in turn, a lot of the abuse and things that he experienced as a kid, he projected that onto her. And especially because, like, his mom, growing up, trying to make sure that his mom, gets out okay, but then holding this unconscious anger surrounding it. He called it a dragon.
So isn't it crazy at how his dragon was created to protect, and yet it was still able to destroy? And I say that because we say how I brought up the protect black women. Well,
Right.
he was using his talents to protect the black woman. Who was that black woman? His mother from his abusive father. He was utilizing his talents, his words, his everything to protect his mother.
Right.
And in reality, that was his double-edged sword, because not only was he protecting one, he ended up harming another.
Right. It was interesting to hear the conversation. I had to back up a couple times because I was like, oh, man, I wish I was there, but I probably would be acting way too much of a fool. just because like, when someone drops something good, you see me on this little screen and I'm alone. So it's very easy for me to, especially when they said it, they were explaining, the process for that healing to occur, especially when it comes to dealing with those you've hurt, offended, the you've essentially broke in one fashion or another. That whole process was really powerful to watch because I mean, we brush on how it's a universal way of kind of handling hard emotions.
I
And
agree.
I don't want to say necessarily handling, but like holding space for.
Hmm.
Um, where you're listening to understand and not to respond. You're trying to learn before you can actually come to a place of like I like not just understanding but recognition of that understanding and regurgitation of it. So like, being able to listen to the individual, speak their truth, especially when dealing with hard emotions, speaking their truth, speaking it and feeling understood in that space, and not feel like somebody is just trying to uh project their own narrative onto the experience, onto this person's hurt, onto their attempt at reconciliation, rehabilitation, healing, what have you.
His process of showing love in that moment was beautiful. LUV. Listen, understand, validate what you agree with. That came from Will Smith. Love. LUV. And that was such a powerful thing. It was amazing to see these two adults sit there and really have a conversation. A man be able to say, I'm sorry,
Mm.
to sit there and say, what I did was wrong. Not make an excuse as to why he did it, but explain where he was at this moment, just as she was.
But he also made it a point, the counselor, the therapist, the
Mm-hmm.
individual that was sitting with him, pointed out that he didn't stay there, that he made sure, even though he brought it up of like, I had this messed up childhood and I had that, I was projecting it, I hurt you, acknowledging that hurt that was caused. I hurt you, this thing I did hurt you, this thing I did hurt you, and like in various ways that was said, like just to so that people feel validated and understood in their thing of like, I I try to repeat it back to you to understand, to make sure I'm understanding what it is, and then adding on, the tip of that. I think he was talking about Jada of being like, that really sucks. That's a really hard, messed up situation. Kind of like we do here when we're listening to people expressing hard pain, feelings. I mean, not just here, but in life in general. It's like we can sit with them in that pain and understand it, and kind of like look around with them and not put our own narrative on it. Just
Mm-hmm.
create an understanding of like, okay, I get where I see where all your pain is coming from, where all your hurt is coming from. And I'm sorry that you're there because it sucks to be there.
Heard.
Heard. To feel heard.
Feel heard.
Everybody
That
wants to
was
feel heard and
so beautiful.
understood.
That's right. And that was such a beautiful time. Like, and that was why I had to share this video with you. I was like, this was so powerful, such a moment to learn and to learn how to accept your fault, learn from what you did, and grow from it and try to rectify it. And I thought it was so amazing at how the counselor was like, "You did everything you're supposed to do." That's the way I took it. Like she was like, "Okay, yeah, you're right. You did this, you did this, you did this," and he was like, "Yeah, this is from thousands of hours of being in counseling."
Right. It's from having Jada as your partner, you know. And through it all too, because actually just like watching it, it triggered a lot for
For
me.
you?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. What's up?
Um, so just kind of like listening to it and everything, I can 100% relate from his experience of growing up, from Will's personal experience of growing up, trying to dance and sing and everything to make sure my mom, as this person, to make sure she was happy and entertained. Because my mom having DID, I never knew who I was going to wake up to. But as long as like I made her laugh, like I knew that I knew that a certain mom would come out if I could do that. And the more I did that, the more uh I felt like I was safe, that I knew that I wasn't gonna have the mom that wakes up in the middle of the night and decides to dump my room, all the stuff out my drawers, all the things off my closet, the shelves, the everything, just because I guess something wasn't put away. I didn't have that experience when, my mom was happy and funny and I was being an entertainer, and I wanted to do that because it in turn turned into me wanting to create that for others. I wanted to create that for others because I knew that if I could, make them happy, smile, sing, then the world might be better, might get better, feel better. But not just that, of like listening and watching that, of like so many levels of the things that we talked about and the things that I felt while doing all the research that we were doing for our Imbibe with a Black Woman episode, just to get more of an understanding of the oppression that Black women feel, the hard things, the hard moments and the biases that I had towards the people that I did, the unconscious ones that I had, because and then when confronted with it, I gave some bullshit excuse, um being thankfully I was able to grow and reconcile with those individuals, but like at the same time, it just kind of it resurfaced all of that, and then it resurfaces that feeling of reflecting on people who have had and might have that same sort of feeling towards me. Cause like with me, I mean, it's kind of it's a joke, but it's also serious. It's kind of either you love me or you hate me. Those are the two extremes. There's no real in between of like, I mean, like he's a good person, but it's like either you love me or you hate me. that's the that's the consensus that I've gotten from the people I've asked. And so I'm not blind. I'm also not blind to the faults that I have as a human being. That the fact that that like I've been angry, or I've been short, or I've been um fucked up to someone, even though I promote like, we're on here and we promote like listening, understanding, and growing, and what have you, but that comes from failing and fucking up. Like that comes from understanding the shit that I did, learning my lessons, learning the thing from my own life experiences. I learned the things that I didn't want to do, the things that I shouldn't have done, or the things I didn't want done to me, or the things that probably people shouldn't have done, in my life, or introduced me to, or whatever the case may be. Watching that, it kind of brought that flood of feelings up. How do you grow? I want to pose this question to you, Omega, and as well, I mean, to listeners at home. If you want to answer this question, feel free. But like in this space of growth, how do you A, forgive, and B, reconcile with those experiences you've had with people, especially if you're never going to be able to actually create reconciliation, etc., with them physically, like, like, oh, we could talk again, or we can be friends, or whatever, like that's not like in the realm, the spectrum of things. um but I mean, like, yeah, how do you how do you begin to forgive and reconcile with those?
Um, That's a very great question. Very great question. And I can actually answer that because I've done it. My father's household was very toxic, very, very toxic environment. Um, and my dad and his wife, my stepmom, their relationship, I could never truly understand. It was, it just felt like there was so much confrontation there. And I never felt comfortable. And I'm saying that because it's like I've always been, my mind was always poisoned towards my stepmom. Mind you, it has only been the recent years that I've even accepted calling her, actually saying, calling her my stepmother. Because for many years, it was just her first name. That was it. To this day, to her face, still just her first name. Never mom, never stepmom, nothing. Because my mind was always poisoned towards her. So I grew up not having a love for her. I was brought up not having any real positive feelings towards her. So you can imagine when things really hit the fan, when my dad was sick and was passing, how I would be able to view her. Now, mind you, I'm not a mean, vindictive or person, but growing up, she's always been at arm's length for me. I was always cordial. I was always kind. I think I've only had one negative interaction with her, and that's between the two of us. I've only had one negative interaction with her in 18 years. But for everybody else around me, multiple. So growing up, I was pretty much taught and shown not to have any feelings or love for her. So years later, my siblings and I, we all finally came together due to the hard work of my brother, my older brother. He brought us all together, and we really hashed out everything. And when I say we hashed out everything, I mean 8 out of the 9 siblings were in one hotel room talking about everything. And I mean everything. We had to look each other in the eye and say, "This is what hurt me. You hurt me. You did this. I did this. We did this. I'm mad at you, or I'm hurt by you, or this was happening." So we had to face our fears. We had to face our deepest, darkest feelings, our raw emotions in regards to each other. But there was one sibling who was still not there. So it wasn't fully done. And at the time, I was angry about it, but then I realized it was for a reason. The next time, which was like a day or so later, we ended up at my stepmother's house where that sibling was. And we all were there again, every single one of us, with the addition of one of our siblings, his wife and daughter were there. We talked to that one that wasn't there. We unpacked everything, or tried to help him open up and unpack everything, and he opened up a bit. But then we also gave a space for our stepmother to speak. We expressed the hurt and anger and vitriol we felt for her, towards her, and then also realized that we never gave her a true chance because of what we were being told and what we were feeling on the outside. We never gave her a real chance. So imagine coming into a household with your guard up at all times because everybody's against you. And that's what we were dealing with. I'm a kid being told adult things, and I shouldn't know these things on both ends. Because all you're doing is you're just getting somebody to be on your side, but really, you're not giving this person an opportunity. I eventually figured out that, and we talked. We all talked. We sat down and we had a long, heartfelt. I mean, there was not a dry eye in the room. We had to talk about it. And the most empowering thing was to sit there and look her in the face and say, "I'm sorry and I forgive you. And hopefully you could forgive me for the way I was acting." You know, and to tell her, "I love you." Because at the end of the day, she was still there for us. in some type of capacity. She's watched me grow up. She's been there my entire life.
Right. What about the space? Like, what about if you don't have that opportunity? What if she passed away and you all didn't get a chance to talk about it?
We would be even more messed up than what we are.
You all would still be able to talk about it with each other, but
There would still be a lack of clarity in things.
within, would you say that would be solely within the dynamic of the siblings, each other, or would you say within yourselves?
Both. And I say that because, mind you, she is the mother of 5 of the kids. So if she was to be gone and we had never had this conversation, there is no explanation that's going to be able to be had so we could have a full clarity of the situation. Because even now, we still don't have that full clarity because my dad's gone.
Right,
Like, my
right.
dad had a lot to do with that issue, those problems. He was the problem. As much as I love him and adore him and miss him, he created a lot of those problems because of the communication and the way he played people.
Mm,
So it's like we just have to understand that. So for us, like, if so, there was still even a portion of it that's still unresolved because everybody's hurting because the one conduit, the one person, the main person that brought us all together is no longer here. So now she can't fully explain everything because he can't validate and or bring that up or back her up on that.
if people are willing to go through that and I guess take, as they refer to it on the Red Table Takeover, um as like taking the punches like Ali, but like, how Ali was really good at taking punches. That not only was he good at giving it, he was good at taking it as well. And essentially that's something in those kinds of situations that you would have to have. um I'm just wondering, like, how many people, I'm actually curious, how many people would be willing to put themselves out there and take those kinds of punches?
It's
Obviously you're gonna
scary.
have to, it is, well, I mean, you're gonna have to leave space for your own emotions as well. And that's not taking the punches is not like shutting down all your emotions and not having any. It's holding the space for the other person to feel their emotions, and then being able to recognize and hold space for yourself to have your own emotions,
Yeah.
and but also be able to understand and unpack them. But like, I feel like, if how many people would actually be willing to go through that much pain? I mean, I guess if people aren't willing to wear a mask so that someone else doesn't get killed, I feel like they're definitely not going to be willing to go through all that emotional and mental pain that you might have to go through in a pandemic in order to get through it. I can understand
No,
why
yeah.
that's difficult.
And I mean, I've done it on a few times. I mean, that was like one big one that I brought up and talked about, right? Whereas we were able to find healing in growth in an uncomfortable situation because we all got to realize what was really happening around us. I made peace with ex girlfriends and apologized to them from recognition of what was going on in my mental and emotional state at the time of when we were dating. So I had to do that for me. They didn't ask me, they didn't hate me. I mean, I thought they did, probably do, but I at least had to make a point for me to just apologize. Okay, I'll give you one. I'll give you one. There was a kid in elementary school that I butted heads with. You would almost think that I was a bully. Me and this kid never seen eye to eye. We were always at each other's throat. Like, I almost whooped this dude up multiple times. And he always had something to say. He was always antagonizing me, always saying stuff, right? We went to science camp. He was in my cabin. I could have lost it. I was like, yo, this dude is not gonna make it tomorrow. This dude said one thing that made me die laughing Yes, this dude said, "Man, I got to piss like a racehorse," and I was like, I lost it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know why it's so funny, but it was right. After that, I was like, you know what? He's not even worth it. I'm just gonna be cool with it, whatever, right? Many years later, we go by. A few years ago, like recently, I found him on Facebook, and I pinned an apology to him. I pinned an apology to him on Facebook Messenger. I just said, "Is this the bleep bleep from school?" I said bleep bleep because I don't want to say his name. Not like he's gonna hear it, but still, just in case. I was like, "Is this the same guy from school?" And he's like, "Yes, this is him." I said, "Well, I just want to tell you, I apologize for any and all wrongdoings that I did in school. I feel terrible at the fact that I would be viewed or even felt or seen as a bully because that's not who I am. I feel terrible for the way I treated you and the things that I said and the way I acted towards you. I don't know why I was so angry towards you, but I just really, really apologize for that. And hopefully you could find it in your heart to forgive me. And if you don't, I understand. And granted, yes, this was way in elementary school, but just think, even to this day, I still think about that. And I don't feel comfortable continuing to teach and be a positive leader in my community and know that I have wronged somebody at the capacity that I did and not try to rectify it. And he was like, "Yo, man, like this is totally unexpected." I'm paraphrasing. "This is totally unexpected. I appreciate you reaching out." He said, "And yes, I mean, you're not completely at fault. I was antagonizing you and I was at fault. I had my own things that I was going through at the time in my own personal life that I was pushing off onto you as well. But I appreciate you reaching out and apologizing, and I accept your apology and thank you for doing this." But I had to put myself out there, even if it was something that was 30 years ago or 20 years ago. In my heart, it felt like it was just yesterday. And I needed to make a point to put myself out there and allow him that space to say, "Yes, I forgive you," or say, "No, I don't." I had to allow him to be like, "Yo, this is what was going on in my life. So this is why I was acting the way I was." And me having to be like, "You know what? That's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that. I hear you. I was going through things too, but that still doesn't justify my reasoning for the way I was treating you. I had no right to do that." So I'm saying it again. I'm willing to do it. I've made my mistakes. I've talked to those people, and I'm sure there's probably even more people that I still need to talk to. Because I'm sure I'm not the I'm nowhere near perfect, but I try my best to not be wrong to people. But it's gonna happen.
Right, and I mean, I feel the same way, but like I said, like there's people where I know I've probably hurt them at that level, at that capacity, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy though, right?
Right.
To be able to go back and apologize to the kids you used to
I've thought
fight
about
with.
that too. Like I've apologized to. I mean, I think I started with my family. I felt like that was necessary. Like my niece who I had on here, Cree, yeah, my 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 other nephew and I, because we were the same age, we were cruel.
Mm-hmm.
I went probably back like 6 years ago, and like I reached out to her and I was like, I'm really sorry. I've been reflecting on a lot of stuff about life and things like that, and especially how we grew up. And we were mean, and there's no excuse for how we treated you, and I'm sorry. Like we, love you, we care for you, want to protect you and all those stuff. So yeah, it's like siblings who treat you like a little sister, but at the same time, there's like a certain line of like the amount of trauma you can cause to people. Like the amount of things we said, like it was there was those level of things in which I reflected on the really terrible things that did, said, treated, and like I went back and like I sat down with her and I was like, I'm sorry, like, and I love you, and um I hope. I mean, you don't need to forgive me, but I hope that somewhere we can find that. And she was just like, oh yeah, it just was what it was growing up. And I'm like, but that don't make it okay. So I love you, and and we got a chance to grow from that, though, in that sense.
And that's an important thing, is the fact that she was understanding about the time and the age and the maturity level. And that's why she was able to like, that's what it was, right? Because I think sometimes even now today we don't think about that. We don't factor in those things because we're so caught up in our emotion. We're caught up in how we feel right now. We're not thinking about where we were at that moment, you know. So it's like for her, she's like, "You're still my little. I still see you as my little Will, And he's like, "I still see you as my Aunt Viv,
Right.
you know." And to say I still see you as such now shows we just needed to process those emotions of the past to help us still be able to live together and love each other in our future.
Absolutely.
You know, that's why when people talk about things that people said and or did in their past, I try to show a little grace because we don't know where they were at in their past, in their mental state, what was going on in their life at that time. Because we all got a deep, dark past. But if we were still on the same tip then, we wouldn't be where we are today. So
Mm,
we had to grow, we had to mature. You know, every wine started off as a grape, but that grape had to be smashed. It had to be juiced. It had to be fermented. It had to go through a whole thing to become the wine that it is today. It didn't happen overnight, unless you're Jesus Christ and you just like, well, I'm gonna turn this water into some wine, and there you go. You have to understand that process that grape went through from inception to growth to being picked to being smashed, to being juiced, to being fermented, to having to wait through that fermentation, then to go through the process of being bottled and everything else to be put into that glass for you to consume. That grape went through a whole process, just like every person has to go through a whole process to become who they are today. Not condoning what they did in the past, but being more understanding so we can understand their future.
mm. And on that note, I kind of want to post something for the Discord. Just I mean, not even doesn't necessarily need to be a question, but more just to to stimulate the neurons, to wet your whistle, if you will. This is a drink podcast, so I figured it could work. Uh, taking an taking an example uh of the Will Smith video, in those early stages of your young adult life, what were you surprised to encounter and have to overcome within yourself? And I ask that because he mentions his dragon inside. And that dragon, that anger, that fire came from the experiences that he had as a child and the relationship that he had with his parents and the unresolved pain and trauma and coping mechanisms that we've created um for ourselves, and how we handle how we handle future situations alike. What what was your dragon? Omega, you don't get to answer here. You have to answer at the Discord.
That's so funny because I was actually thinking about that, posting the video that we just talked about,
Mhm.
and then asking that,
Yeah.
what was your dragon? All right, so this is out to everybody in our Patreon. We want to say thank you guys so much for your patronage. We really, truly, deep down appreciate each and every one of you that took your hard-earned money and decided to bless us with it and help us to live out our dream and continue to bring you guys great content and merchandise. We truly, truly deep down appreciate each and every one of you. Even if you are unable to do so financially, you're doing so with your thoughts, minds, love, and heart. It's truly felt and appreciated as well. We would like to tell you guys to please join us in our Discord, join us on our IG as well as our Facebook, and engage in the conversation. Like, subscribe, and follow. Check out our videos. We're trying to put up more and more content, but you know what keeps us inspired to want to do that? Your engagement and the way that you guys will respond and follow and talk with us, because we love to have great conversations with each and every one of you.
And to find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, you could check us out at Have a Drink Cast. And be sure to use that hashtag HADcast on anything you post of us, anything you post for us. If you have a question, go ahead, shoot us, tag us in it, hashtag it, and be sure we can get our eyes on it.
Those of you that are out of the country that are listening to our show, I would love to get in contact with you in some way, shape, or form. So please engage with us on our IG and our Facebook. We would love to put a name to a face and a face to a name, as well as just to get to know you guys out there and see how far really our message does spread out. We appreciate you guys and thank you guys.
Actually, I have a little. It just sparked in my mind. I wanna make a little mini contest in the middle of this little closing out break. For the first 10 people to either find us in our Discord and type in HAD, will be receiving a special little prize in their mail. Obviously, we will be contacting the first 10 people and getting all their information necessary if we don't already have it. Um, and we'll be sending it out your way.
All right. That sounds like a fun thing. And I'm assuming that I can't do it.
No, Omega, you can't do it.
I tried. I tried.
Because I mean, we already have the stuff.
Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter. Um, yeah. So please join us, everybody, and engage in the conversation because we would love to hear from you guys, talk with you guys, get to know you guys. We are very personable and approachable online as well as in person.
Absolutely. All right, it's about that time. All right. I want to implore you all to raise your glasses. Brother, thank you for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, thank you for listening at home and joining us for another successful episode of the Have a Drink podcast, where we invite you back to sit, think, and have a drink. That's been us. Peace.
Peace.